start asking questions. Okay, so go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, my name is Carrie Hare. I teach at Swope Middle School. This was a 7th grade class. They are an accelerated integrated Algebra 1 geometry class over a 2-year period.
Count to 5 for me again.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
One more time.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay. Let's do the introduction
Okay.
one more time.
All right. Hi, my name is Carrie Hare. I teach at Swope Middle School in Reno, Nevada. This class was a 7th grade class. They're accelerated, and it's an integrated algebra geometry class over 2 years.
Great. So let's start. First question. We want to understand the decisions you made in planning for this lesson and how it fits into the unit and year. First question, how does this lesson connect to and build on students' prior skills and knowledge? What was taught before the lesson and what will come after it?
Okay. This lesson was made so that students could connect multiple representations to a variety of situations. And we started this unit with proportions and just solving proportions. And we spent the first part of the year doing proportions, but then we started moving into the function realm of things. And so we wanted to look at multiple representations. What do proportional relationships look like in a graph, in a table, in an equation? And this lesson came right after that unit, where we're moving into not just proportional relationships, but linear relationships, where they're looking at different y-intercepts and how would a y-intercept change the relationship from a proportional relationship to a linear relationship. My goal in this lesson was for them to really see that linear relationships can be represented numerically, graphically, and algebraically.
Okay. Talk about the standards or cluster targeted in this lesson. What do you do to make the lesson reflect the full intent of that standard or cluster?
Okay, so my class, we first started with the standard 7RPA, which is the proportional relationships for grade 7. And because it's an accelerated class, we do move into the 8th grade standards. And we went into the 8th grade EEB, which is relating proportional relationships and their structures to linear relationships and their structures. We also explored the function domain of 8FA, which is looking at those multiple representations. When we look at a situation, can we look at it, how do we look at it graphically? How do we look at numerically within a table, and how do we look at it with an equation? And traditionally, it seems like algebra is really focused on the equation, but with these new standards, we're really looking at those multiple representations and other ways kids can look at situations rather than just through an algebraic equation.
Which of the core action indicators do you think this lesson best exemplified, and how did you plan for this?
Is this question C?
Yeah.
Okay. Under core action 1, I believe it really exemplified the rigor shift because we moved into not just procedural knowledge, but that application side of things and making the connections of when we were just looking at a tile pattern into how that would fit into their real world and making that connection with their science class. I also think under core action 2, we really, I really tried to hit B, which is thinking about questions that make the students think. I think I could have done a better job at that, but I really try to not just feed the answers to the students, but really have them think about what their answer means. And then that would also lead into core action 3B, which is where the kids justify their thinking. In my classroom, one of the shifts we've done is we don't necessarily just say this is the answer. We talk about why this is the answer and what are other ways we can say that this is the answer, not just one way. And so in my class, we talk a lot about it's better to know 5 ways to do one problem than 1 problem or 5 problems one way.
We're interested in how the shifts required by the CCSS are being incorporated into your classroom. First question is, discuss how this lesson illustrates the shifts required by the CCSS.
Okay, so the shifts, first we have focus, and that wasn't illustrated too much in the lesson, but prior to every unit, we do pull up the clear learning objectives. Every day the students in their planners write what the objective for the day is. And this objective for today was relating multiple representations to a real world situation. The next one is coherence, and I think that has been one of the biggest shifts in my instructions. That connecting to their prior knowledge and connecting to what they're going to be learning in the future is really important in my class. I've always tried to make those connections, but with the shifts, it's more deliberate rather than just on a whim. And then finally, the rigor. My class, instead of just doing, here's a lesson, here's a procedure, now repeat it 20 times, we have 3 types of days in my class. We have explore days where we're really looking at what does this standard mean? How would it fit in the curriculum? And then the next day we might solidify it with the mathematical side of things, and then they get some practice. And I think that's really helped the kids make the connections between just learning math and understanding math.
How did you teach the content of this lesson prior to the CCSS? What is the same and what's different?
Okay, you know what, I'm not repeating the question very well, am I?
It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, if you remember, that's good.
Okay.
If you don't.
Okay, so how has my instruction changed when we introduced the shifts? Well, before I would come up with connections and I would have my epiphanies and I would share them with the kids, and it was exciting for me as a teacher because teaching content really does help you understand the content. But I think I was doing my students a disservice because I was having the epiphanies. I was sharing, hey, check out this connection. And then I was saying, this is how you do the problems, now do a bunch. Whereas now, I'm having the kids come up with the connections. And I'm saying, what do you notice? How can you connect this to what we learned before? Do you see any similarities? Do you see any differences? And the kids are coming up with those epiphanies rather than me. And it's really exciting because I'll be like, wow, you just took me to a higher level as a teacher, and I actually understand the content better because of the students explaining their thinking and having those variety of ways. So focusing on the lesson, that came into my classroom a couple years ago. The coherence really has been a big push of mine this year, and connecting each unit to the next unit and each lesson to the next lesson. And then the rigor, I think that's probably my biggest change, is looking at not just the procedural, but the application and where it fits in. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's fine. Okay, so let's see here. Student engagement is crucial to the work of the CCSS. We want to understand how you ensured that all students had the opportunity to productively engage in the work of the lesson. First question, how did the students handle this lesson? Did they understand the mathematics, and how do you know?
I think the students handled the lesson pretty well. I did walk around and I did see multiple approaches, which I liked. The directions said to start with a graph, and a lot of students didn't read that and they jumped right into the unit rate calculation of the lesson. And so I really wanted them to understand how the graph could relate. So I think that was good and bad because the students took what they knew how to do and they approached the problem in that way. I think all the students were somewhat engaged in the lesson. I didn't really feel like I had anyone off task. There was one point where I had a boy who seemed to be a little confused on what the task at hand was, and so I think I helped him just with the first person in the tricycle race, and once he figured that out, he flew and was ready to go.
Explain how you differentiated in this lesson. Did all students have the opportunity to work on grade level content? And if all students did not have this opportunity, explain why.
I believe all students had the opportunity to work on grade level content in this course. I'm lucky in the regards of this class is that it's an accelerated class and they're very grade level capable. And I think I differentiated by letting students approach the problem in multiple ways and having multiple entry points. So students had the opportunity to figure out the answer to the problem for the big race in a variety of ways, not just being stuck to one way. And that's how my class runs. I don't want them to just have one way that works. I want them to have multiple ways that work.
Which behaviors from Core Action 3 did the students best exemplify, and what actions have you taken as a teacher to make that happen?
During Core Action 3, I think having my students justify their work in their solutions is what exemplifies most in this lesson and in my class. Something that has shifted over the last 2 years is my students don't just find an answer, they justify an answer. The path to the solution is more important than the solution itself. I think another thing in the lesson that I see as a positive and a negative when I was bringing students up to share their solutions to the warm-up. One student had a wrong answer up there, but another student jumped right in and helped him figure out where his mistake was. And so building that culture where students are working together to help each other to find mistakes and fix mistakes without it being seen as a failure has really been a big culture in my class.
Would you like to comment on any of the submitted work? Was there something that delighted you or surprised you with the students' work?
The submitted work, like I said, most students, it was directed that they start with the graph, and a lot of students jumped right into the unit rate. So I think my goal will be to go back in this lesson and really look at the graphical interpretations of this problem versus the unit rate numeric side of it. Something that delighted me was more students than I thought were able to think about what their rate would need to be in order to become a 4th place contender. It took them a while, but they were able to get through that. Another thing I liked about the submitted work is that they all mentioned different ways they could represent the relationships with the situations. And some students chose the graph because they liked that visual side of things, whereas other students said they chose the table or the unit rate because they liked having those numbers and those solid calculations. And so I think building those into my class was good.
Great instructors are continuously learning. We want to understand what you celebrated in this lesson and what you would improve upon. First question, reflecting on the lesson, what worked particularly well and what might you do differently?
Okay. What worked well was getting the kids thinking, and I think the discussion in the warm-up where can we separate the donuts or can we not separate the donuts was good. As I was walking around and bringing the students up to the front, I wanted students that said the grocery store was a better option or the donut shop was a better option. And I, in error, picked someone that had a wrong solution. So I really felt bad putting him on the spot with that incorrect solution. That was a negative, but the positive was the student that helped him. So I would, I think, be a little bit more careful in what I would choose to come to the front of the room to share. I think the students were able to approach the problem. That was I was a little worried about that because we had done tile patterns, but we had never jumped into the real world situation. So I was worried that students wouldn't really know what to do if they got a 3-meter head start or if they started 5 seconds later, how that would affect their graph. But I was pleasantly surprised the students really did understand how that would affect their starting points within the graph, not necessarily a y-intercept, but possibly an x-intercept. And so I did like that. What I would change is better questioning. I think having stronger questions, making the students explain their thinking a little better.
Good. Last question.
Okay.
Were there any surprises or unexpected student behaviors or reactions?
Were there any surprises or unexpected student reactions? Some of my students that sometimes take a while to get going really jumped into this problem, so I was really impressed that all my students were excited to find out who won. I liked some of the, do we want to do that again?
Yeah,
okay.
if you don't mind.
No, that's okay. And let me think about surprises or reactions.
Were there any surprises or unexpected student behaviors and reactions?
Okay. Were there any surprises in the lesson? I think every day I have surprises in my lessons. So there were definitely parts within there where students would say something and I'd be like, I never even thought about it that way. Honestly, I never thought of figuring out a unit rate for each of the contenders in the tricycle race. And so that surprised me that the majority of the class jumped to that. I think it was because we had a solid connection between proportional relationships. Would I change anything? I can't remember the second part.
Were there any surprises or unexpected student behaviors
Okay.
or reactions?
Okay. And were there any unexpected student behavior or reactions? I think the students were all pretty much on task and excited to kind of figure out who could win the race. I enjoyed their enthusiasm at the end where it was, what can you do to come in fourth place? Some of the unexpecteds were being super creative rather than just coming up with a mathematical, a couple kids said, well, I would start 24 seconds late and get in a spaceship and then win. So I thought that was kind of funny, unexpected. That wasn't kind of the goal, but I do like that creative thinking in that real world connection, and everything's not necessarily just mathematics. You have to take into account what's going on in the real world. Okay.
You did it!
Yay!
Good work.